diversion of funds, unfairness and imbalance in the rights and obligations of home buyers and developers in the sale agreement, failure to inform purchasers about alteration or addition to the sold plans, failure to gain consent of purchasers on alterations or additions to the sold plans, money laundering as exposed by the FCT, delays in conveying title documents, non-provision of primary and secondary infrastructure, etc. In a bid to address these problems, the Right Honorable Speaker, Right Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila, and the entire leadership of the House, at its plenary on the 29th of June, 2021, set up this ad hoc committee with the following mandates. 1, to investigate complaints of misconduct of the real estate developers and create a forum for members of the public to lodge complaints against such fraudulent developers. 2, fully investigate the real estate developers suspected of violating applicable laws and liaise with enforcement agencies with a view to prosecution. 3, work with relevant stakeholders and ministries, departments and agencies of government towards formulating laws, issuing guidelines or other appropriate legislation and regulations for more than ₦1 trillion sector. 4, liaise with relevant NDAs to revisit the issue of compiling a database on property transactions and newly approved developments, while also ensuring that real estate developers are duly licensed before engaging in the practice. 5, liaise with relevant NDAs like Nigeria Financial Intelligence Unit, Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria, National Housing Fund, Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offenses Commission, ICPC, towards plugging financial crimes in the sector. This committee has reached out to law enforcement agencies who, in the true spirit of cooperation, have expressed their readiness to support the committee in achieving its mandate. And today, we have the chairman of the ICPC here in person and the chairman of the EFCC here, ably represented by the director, one of his directors. We have also enjoyed the selfless cooperation of the FCT minister. We are still expecting him. His namesake is here, and his team, the civil society organizations here with us as well. And we are looking forward to partnering with other relevant agencies. The committee shall be inviting real estate developers and other stakeholders in the sector to give us in-depth accounts of their activities and, where necessary, go on oversight visits. We will work with relevant stakeholders to strengthen and introduce regulation through legislation to advance global best practice with the aim to protect home buyers' interests and boost the sector's appeal to investors. Finally, I wish to express my sincere gratitude to all stakeholders and encourage more submissions. We will address all petitions received and ensure that this thriving sector generates revenue before the FCT. We are here as lawmakers. Finally, I said, Right Honorable Speaker, and the entire House here, I wish to express my sincere gratitude to all stakeholders and encourage more submissions. We will, as a committee, address all petitions received and ensure that this thriving sector generates revenue for the FCT. I pray for God's guidance and wisdom as we commence deliberations. God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I am delighted to be in your midst today at this maiden meeting to formally inaugurate the ad hoc committee, even as you commence this very crucial task which has been assigned to you. As you are all aware, one of our primary tasks and constitutional responsibilities as elected representatives of the people and of our various constituencies is to, among other things, ensure the welfare and prosperity of our people. Access to decent and affordable housing is one of the primary indicators of such economic empowerment and social well-being. With the current housing deficit in Nigeria, which is estimated to be between 17 and 20 million housing units, and also said to be increasing annually by about 900,000 units, the potential cost of overcoming this deficit is also put at about 6 trillion naira. This highlights the huge opportunity that exists in the real estate sector. However, there are gaps in the relevant legislation that empowers some real estate developers while they capitalize on this opportunity to also operate with impunity, sometimes subverting the dreams and billions of naira of hard-working Nigerians. Lack of accountability and regulation in the dealings between these real estate developers and home buyers have caused a lot of hardships to many already struggling Nigerians who desire to own their own houses. It is therefore our responsibility to introduce an effective regulation to resolve these issues all over. I am, at this point, very happy to commend the efforts of the ICPC and the EFCC and all other relevant government agencies in sanitizing this very important sector. Hardworking Nigerians should not lose their money to fraudulent developers with no consequences. Nigerians are crying out over these sharp practices, and we cannot turn our deep ear to their cries. That is why I was very happy when Honorable Omar from Rivers State brought the motion on the floor on the need to investigate the operations of real estate developers in the Federal Capital Territory. The resolutions of this committee will hopefully ameliorate and bring some lasting solutions to the lack of transparency, professionalism, and accountability in the real estate sector, while introducing legislation to protect home buyers from unfair contracts and other dealings and other sharp practices highlighted in this subsector. As I formally inaugurate the ad hoc committee to investigate the operations of real estate developers in FCT, I would like to assure you of the support of my office, in this case the Speaker's office.
The ICPC has, over the years, in line with its mandate under its Enabling Act, the Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Act, received a number of petitions since inception. Even though we have not aggregated the numbers that relate to land matters, we have, however, received a number of petitions from stakeholders in the real estate and housing sector, off-takers, prospective buyers, and the general public regarding the behavior and the antics of real estate developers within the Federal Capital Territory and sometimes outside of the Federal Capital Territory on this very important subject matter. These complaints and petitions are varied. the border on forgery, the cloning of land documents, double or multiple land allocations, allocation of land without the minister's approval, revocation of land title without due process, non-delivery of projects, embezzlement of sourced capital, land racketeering, the use of land syndicates and speculators, the marketing of fake layouts, fraudulent allocation of land, inordinate delay in processing of land documents for those who subscribe to their projects, general abuse of office, bribery, dishonesty, fraud, payment scams, or the refusal of government itself to pay fair value for acquired land, and the concomitant refusal of settlers and traditional owners to give access to legitimate land allottees, and other related issues and challenges. Aside from the petitions received by the Commission, there are other noticeable problems of real estate development in Abuja, in particular in Nigeria as a whole. This includes generally the high cost of home acquisition, the unstable capital market, environmental, social, and governance factors, currency volatility, increased rural to urban migration, ineffective property protection laws, perceived multiple tax and poor building quality, etc. While some of these challenges may be tackled by legislative and executive laws and policies, others are strictly based on the interplay of economic forces. I'm not unaware, of course, by some stakeholders for laws to compel house owners to collect monthly rent rather than sometimes annual or 2-year rents. Now, while this will be in line with the economic realities of potential tenants, because nobody gets their salary 1 year in advance, people get their salaries monthly. Nevertheless, past experience shows that such laws are not enforceable, as they can easily be undermined by the parties as demand for housing outstrips supply. Therefore, government should focus on introducing policies to encourage massive home production, infrastructure and incentives, and effective law enforcement to positively impact home production through public and private partnerships. I can tell you that Lagos State has such a law, and it is not working anyway. Everybody just pretends about it. In addressing some of the issues raised in the petitions that are forwarded to ICPC, we have at different times had successfully investigated and prosecuted some errant public officers and their collaborators, including staff of the Federal Capital Development Authority, staff of Civil Defense, persons who abuse public trust, fraudulent real estate development operatives, and other ancillary people. And we have further deepened the mass housing gap in the FCT. Our investigations have led to recovery of assets and funds which are either considered to have been diverted that were retrieved in the public interest. In some situations, we've simply ensured that the projects that were contemplated were delivered to the beneficiaries who had paid for them. Furtherance to the above, we conducted a system study and review of mass housing delivery in the Federal Capital Territory in 2010 and 2011, where it was discovered that members of the Real Estate Development Association of Nigeria, REDAN, who had been allocated huge plots of land for mass housing development in the FCT, in collaboration with the federal government through the Federal Mortgage Bank, and with responsibility to provide infrastructure upon which the allocations were made to them, and they were to work with NHF, that's National Housing Fund contributors. These developers failed in the payment of counterpart funding and in the delivery of the infrastructure to project site, and rather they resorted to offering and selling the plots to the highest bidder, contrary to the policy. In other words, they got the land, agreed with the government, we will build, we will provide funding, but they did not provide funding. They simply carved out the land and sold it to the highest bidder and just undermined the interests of the civil servants and the public sector that the entire project was meant for. Some of these abuses were hardly ever sanctioned by the FCDA. In other words, the FCDA, in full knowledge of these abuses, simply looked the other way. Now, the effect of the action of REDAN members, of course, as we all know, is that low and middle income earners, who were supposed to be the direct beneficiaries of National Housing Fund, because some money is taken out of our salaries as contribution to the National Housing Fund, they were denied to housing because the plan and the objective was totally frustrated by the mischievous and fraudulent approach of the REDAN collaborators, because those beneficiaries could not even secure housing allocation, which formed the basis for accessing the fund. The estates ended up being the exclusive preserve of the rich in the society. The consequent pressure that this sort of outcome puts on low and middle income earners is that it becomes a push factor for public sector corruption, as public servants who are desperate for their own homes subvert the processes, government policies, and they abuse their office for private gain in order to meet the desire for decent housing. Furthermore, some members of REDAN access funds from the Federal Mortgage Bank for mass housing, but divert those funds to construct private estates, which are again sold at exorbitant prices to the general public, excluding public officers who are the main and intended beneficiaries of the projects and structures and even the policies and mandate of the Federal Mortgage Bank. But such public officers cannot afford the high prices of such houses. It should be noted that by the original concept of the mass housing policy of government, developers are supposed to profile and forward names of allottees to FCDA to issue certificates of occupancy. But in practice, developers do not comply with these policies, and subscribers are often left at their mercies, holding only letters of allocation without a proper title to land. It is worthy of note that developers use this strategy as a ploy, some of them sometimes, to hold on to estates that are developed by them as facility managers, maintenance managers, and many such situations which management costs are very high to the subscribers. Some result in serial litigation over facility management in many of those estates. This is not peculiar to the FCT. The same thing happens in Lagos, and in many estates, the residents simply go up in arms against those who develop those things because they want to milk the owners dry in the name of facility management. While facility management is required, but it does not have to be at the price of the blood of those who have subscribed to the estates. The intervention of the ICPC in this sector has led to recoveries on behalf of some allottees, for Federal Mortgage Bank, for FCDA, and sometimes for other stakeholders. In a related vein, corrupt public officers use real estate investment as vehicle for hiding ill-gotten wealth and money laundering, nefarious activities. We think that a more focused and more rigorous due diligence on the part of the FCDA will reduce the opportunities for charlatans to get into the sector. The FCDA also should continue to collaborate more closely with anti-corruption agencies to deal with incidents of corruption, fraud, maladministration, and other offenses. And I want to again publicly pledge our support to the FCDA, to the Ministry, intents unchecked. The first step has been taken in this collaboration between the legislature and I think the executive, and we're all here to be a part of it. Thank you, and God bless you.
It's an issue regarding mass housing within the Federal Capital Territory. A lot of what needs to be said has been said by our distinguished chairman of the ICPC, who is a person that I've had the good fortune of working very closely with during the last few years on this particular issue. And like he has told you, tremendous milestone has been achieved. But the reality and my personal concern is that the whole idea of mass housing is to provide affordable housing to the teeming population, to reduce the housing deficit. And in so doing, there are stakeholders within the entire value chain. The government, of course, that provides the land, and then the investors from the private sector that develop the lands. But more importantly, all this collaborative effort is quite frankly aimed at the off-takers. These are the poor families, men and women, that are going to be ultimate beneficiaries of these estates. And once you talk of housing, basically you are talking of something that is a right for everybody. And once you are in your house, you are supposed to be king in that house. I mean the family, because that is your sanctuary. That is your place where, after all the hassles of the day, you go back to. This is the basic principle, and I think it's a very important principle and concept of collaboration between the government and the private sector. Along the line, just like with many other good intentions, along the line, I think challenges have occurred during the process of the implementation, some of which I will be able to just raise briefly. But I do hope the public hearing today will be able to look at all these issues across the entire value chain, including all the issues raised by the chairman of ICPC, so that at the end of the day, the committee will guide us through its robust conclusion of the discussions here, so that I think ultimately the whole objective is a way forward, so that we do not lose track of the real reason why the entire policy of mass housing was initiated by my predecessors, because I think it's still a very good policy. We just need to look at where we have challenges, and then we move on. Of course, along the line with all policies, people now use some of it for money laundering, for all kinds of things that are not proper. But that is the way of life, so it's our duty as public officers, either as legislators or either as public appointed officials like myself, or regulatory agencies like the ICPC, EFCC, and even the Federal Mortgage Bank, to look at the whole ecosystem holistically, and then look at areas where there are challenges, and then refocus for each of us our roles, so that we really work on it. Not forgetting that ultimately, honorable members, the objective is to make sure that the off-takers enjoy their investments, stay in accommodation that is befitting, within facilities that are secure, where they are going to raise their families in peace and harmony. I think basically that's what I would just want to say, except that I would like to use this medium to thank the honorable members of the House of Reps here for the support, and also to thank the House Leader for his kind words, to thank my colleagues in the FCT, and above all to thank those in the EFCC and ICPC for the kind of support they have given to us, and also to assure everybody here that by the grace of God, whatever the issues are, whatever is required of us as an administration, we'll work very hard and assiduously to make sure that we achieve the ultimate objective. And thank you very much for allowing me to speak, sir.
EFCC is charged with. So there is this department in EFCC called the Special Control Unit Against Money Laundering. They are charged with the responsibility of registering, monitoring, supervising, players within the designated non-financial institutions, which the real estate players fall within the bracket. From our records, we have registered as of today over 1,000 real estate firms in FCT. Yes, from our records. And we've been having this partnership with Reader as well. So the happenings around that sector calls for education and training of the real estate professionals to prepare them to combat the menace of money laundering in the sector. And this should be coupled with the need to further develop monitoring systems in the financial sector.